Last year, my grandma has don't enter water don't carry am. Government, I call video, I call CMO. Since last year, my grandma has don't enter water.
For 66 years, Nigeria pumped oil from the ground and then paid other countries to turn it into fuel.
So we were flaring gas, which is a very important commodity.
We grew it, we shipped it out raw, and then we bought it back, refined at premium prices. That era, it is officially over. I know you have. Then you already know that something massive has been building for the past 2 years at a quiet industrial complex on the shores of Lekki, Lagos. But in March 2026, the thing that generations of Nigerians were told would never happen actually happened. Nigeria became a net exporter of petrol for the very first time in its history. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. We've heard this kind of story before. Government announcements, big claims, then nothing. But stay with me, because this time, the numbers are real, they are verified, and they are telling a story that every Nigerian deserves to understand. Today, we're going to break down exactly what happened, why it matters, and most importantly, what it means for your pockets, your naira, and Nigeria's future. Let me paint you a picture that many of us live through. You wake up at 4 a.m. Your car is almost empty. You drive to the filling station, and there's already a queue stretching 3 blocks. You sit there, 1 hour, 2 hours, sometimes all day. Meanwhile, tankers are leaving our shores every week, loaded with Nigeria's crude oil, heading to refineries in Rotterdam, in Antwerp, in Spain. They process it, they refine it, they ship it back to us, and we pay them in dollars for the privilege. Does that make sense to you? Because it never made sense to me. Here is the cold, hard fact. Nigeria, Africa's largest oil producer, spent over 6 decades never once recording a single year of refined fuel surplus. Not one. From 1960 to 2025, 65 years of independence, we were always, without exception, a net importer of the very fuel our own ground produced. We had government refineries in Port Harcourt and Warri, built in the late 1980s. But they ran at fraction capacity, technical failures, corruption, poor maintenance. They have been essentially idle throughout the period we're discussing today. And so, year after year, billions of dollars left Nigeria's economy and went straight into the pockets of foreign refiners. That was our reality, until one man and one very, very large refinery decided to change it. The Dangote Petroleum Refinery sits on the Lekki Free Trade Zone in Lagos. It is the largest single-train refinery in the world, with a design capacity of 650,000 barrels per day. To put that in perspective, that's more crude oil per day than the entire country of Nigeria consumes in refined fuel. When it began operations in late 2023, there were skeptics, there were critics. Many people, some of them from very powerful places, said it would never work, that it would face too many obstacles, that the crude supply would be choked. But here's what the data shows. By October 2025, the refinery was supplying about 31% of Nigeria's domestic petrol needs. That alone was a remarkable achievement. But then, it started ramping up fast. By January 2026, the refinery's market share had climbed to nearly 67%. By March 2026, it reached an astonishing 72.3% of everything Nigerians pumped into their cars and generators. And crucially, the refinery's capacity utilization hit a record 93.62% in that same month, meaning it was firing on almost all cylinders. Think about what that means. Out of every 10 liters of petrol consumed in Nigeria today, more than 7 of them came from right here, on Nigerian soil, processed by Nigerian workers. And the numbers from this day's analysis of official NMDPRI data confirm it. Between October 2025 and March 2026, just 6 months, Nigeria consumed 10.277 billion liters of petrol in total. The Dangote Refinery alone supplied 5.582 billion liters of that, more than half. Now let's bring this home, because history books are great.
Due to their own people.
There is no fish anymore, no employment.
But what does any of this mean for the ordinary Nigerian? For you, first, the import bill. One of the biggest drains on Nigeria's foreign exchange has always been the fuel import bill.
Dollars in oil revenue had just gone missing.
Every liter of petrol we bought from abroad had to be paid for in dollars. That put constant pressure on the naira. It made the exchange rate volatile. It made everything expensive. Now that pressure is easing. Imports have fallen by 85% in just 6 months, from 1.44 billion liters in November 2025 to just 182.9 million liters in March 2026. As we start exporting instead of importing, dollars flow in rather than out. That is good for the naira. That is good for inflation. That is good for every Nigerian who buys food, pays school fees, or runs a business. Second, fuel queues. Remember those days? Lines at the filling station stretching around the block. The data shows that Nigeria now has a domestic sufficiency rate of over 87% for petrol. The refinery is supplying more than 22,681 retail outlets across the country, loading directly from domestic depots rather than waiting for ships to arrive from overseas. The logistical nightmare of import supply chains is becoming a thing of the past. Third, jobs and industry. A refinery of this scale doesn't just produce fuel, it produces diesel, it produces fertilizer, it produces petrochemicals, it creates supply chains, it creates employment, and it creates the foundation for Nigeria to become not just an oil producer, but an oil processor, a nation that adds value before it exports. Federal officials have also noted that eliminating the petrol subsidy, that painful reform many of us felt in our wallets in 2023, has prevented a fiscal crisis that could have consumed up to 76% of the 2026 national budget. The subsidy is gone, and the refinery is what makes that bearable. Now, I would not be doing my job if I didn't give you the full picture. There are still challenges. The government-owned Port Harcourt and Warri refineries remain essentially shut. One private refinery, no matter how large, cannot be the only answer to a nation of over 200 million people. Crude supply to the Dangote facility still needs to be reliable and consistent. There have been periods of shortfall, and that remains a vulnerability. Petrol prices at the pump have also faced upward pressure in 2026, partly due to global crude price swings. The transition from import dependence to domestic production is not painless, and that net export surplus, 3,000 barrels per day, is currently slim. It is a beginning, not a destination. But here is what I will say. Every great journey starts with a first step. And March 2026 was that step.